A good reason for a remake is to fix a good idea that was executed poorly, or to bring something great up to modern standards to be further enjoyed beyond its time, or to cash in on popularity. There are great games that never need a remake. There are great games where a remake is needed because the original is rather dated. There are great games where a remake is just to gauge interest and measure out how much money they can make bringing the franchise back, making us wonder why they would even bother. Yeah, I didn't bother with the Dead Space remake. The original is still great. A remaster at best would be acceptable. The only changes I would accept would be altering stat values and enemy placement, making them more resistant to being stunned, which can be done with a mod. Or a complete overhaul of the weapons so that they're less like military weapons with a different skin, or remaking the whole game like a Metroidvania open world type of game. Also to move some items around, like removing the pulse rifle as your second weapon and moving it to the USM Valor, because it makes no sense why any non-military spaceship in any sci-fi series to have military weapons. It's cheap now, or you can play it for free with those online passes. Yeah, I know. Well, what? Many games have been remade, but not all of them were actually good. Whether it was rush production, incompetence, misunderstanding the source material, etc. Some remakes were completely different, and some made little change, but neither direction were an indication of success. Some remakes that were completely different were better, and some remakes that were the same were worse. Abe's Oddysee is a great game, if a bit slow in parts. The remake was a great chance to bring the game to newer players. Many of the screens were exactly the same or very similar to the original. What could go wrong? Despite using the same exact designs as the original, the art style was too bright, clean, and sci-fi from the original. Everything looks worse. The controls in the original game could get an update, but the controls in the remake were horrible. It's funny, I can remember many areas of the original game, but can barely remember the remake. The first 3 Crash Bandicoot games got a remake. It's mostly a 1-to-1 remake. It's fine. However, the coding changed between each game, even if it was small. Stuff like how fast Crash moved, jump height, jump speed, hitbox, etc. In the remakes, they wanted to be a bit more consistent and keep the code the same between all 3 games. Which is fine, except the stage layouts were kept the same, which resulted in some jumps being harder to make. Even the code creator of Crash Bandicoot criticized the remakes for getting the jumping wrong. A similar thing happened with the Majora's Mask remake. A slight change in momentum made some areas harder when it was fine before. The best reason for a video game remake is for players to experience playing the game for the first time again. Keeping a remake 1-to-1 of the original doesn't do this. The Resident Evil 1 remake was so good that it's actually considered a better replacement over the original. For years, people were wondering about a Resident Evil 2 remake, and even the devs that wanted to make the game basically had to beg Capcom for it, which came out to high praise and memes. Then they shout out Resident Evil 3 remake to massive disappointment. Everybody was a bit concerned about a Resident Evil 4 remake, and rightly so. Resident Evil 4 was already such a huge leap from the previous games that the idea of a remake having that same impact was thought to be impossible. Would it be a disappointment? Would it be faithful? Would it be too faithful, as in pointless? Would it be so different that any new players who hadn't played the original would get a bad idea of what the original was like? If it was different and sold well, would that tell the publishers that people don't want to play Resident Evil and instead wanted to play Giraffe Blowjob? Also, the franchise is owned by Capcom. Now, we all love Capcom, they deserve a lot of praise, but a lot of the decisions over the years have been really bad. They're also neglecting a lot of their own IPs. We've kind of reached a point where it doesn't matter what game it is, a new Capcom game is either hit or miss. It did come out, and it came out with high praise, but not enough high praise? Or at least not the same impact as the original Resident Evil 4 did when it came out. It's great, don't get me wrong, but it didn't eclipse the original like Resident Evil 1 Remake did, prompting people to ask, which is better? Did it actually improve on the original, or was it merely imitation? Maybe it's time someone measured that. Which I kind of want to do because most discussions or comparison videos on this subject really lack substance. A lot of people's opinions are just soul versus soulless, which is really unfair. Well, actually it is rather fair, with the way production for video games goes when the company becomes large enough. Capcom is a Japanese developer though. Video game production isn't as draconian as Western developers are. Most videos or discussions I've seen are just holding each example up against each other and saying nothing. This is what this gun looks like in the original and the remake. Okay, what are you saying? Are you saying it's faithful? Are you saying it's unimaginative? Is one better than the other? Are they the same? What even is your argument here? I feel like a comparison hasn't been done justice. It sucks when you get a feeling like that, you know? Someone needs to talk about something and you wait around, but nobody actually does. Like, when I went and saw Star Wars 7 The Force Awakens, I left that movie feeling nothing. And when I looked around the internet, I saw so many people praising it. I didn't understand. I waited around and was happy to see Red Letter Media finally releasing a video on the movie. They're the catalyst for Star Wars criticism, and I thought they could finally explain my feelings. Only to find out their video was mostly about the prequels again. Sometimes you need that. Someone can point to something and say it's good or bad, and when you ask why, they don't have an answer. Sometimes you need someone else to come in and explain it. A lot of comments or videos on Resident Evil 4 Remake seems to be rather one-sided or not taking any sides, not exactly explaining one way or the other. Well, if you want a job done right, do it yourself. Now, you may be looking at my subscriber count and my total views and be asking, who the hell are you to make that judgment? Which is a fair point. I don't exactly have the credentials for that position, especially when I have a bad history with remakes. But I think the argument being made is better than the person behind it. Someone isn't right just because they're popular, you know? I also feel like I can be rather subjective and objective over topics, and be impartial on opinions. In my video on Final Fantasy VII-6 Remake, I mentioned that how objectively the Honeybee Inn didn't make sense while operating within the slums, that it would make more sense to be operating on top of the plate. Then mentioned how subjectively I didn't like the minigame, then ended it by saying how I understand why someone would subjectively like this sequence. I can be all over the place with opinions. While I understand people love Resident Evil 2 over Resident Evil 1, I actually think Resident Evil 1 is better designed overall. However, I think Resident Evil 2 on hard mode is better than Resident Evil 1. Then, I think Resident Evil 2 Remake is actually better designed over Resident Evil 2, even though some areas of the original game were better. Like how the original Resident Evil 2 actually has 4 different scenarios to play through, whereas the remake really only has 2. In the remake, Leon and Claire have the same story regardless of which scenario is being played. The only real difference is Scenario A has a conversation with Marvin. Scenario B's only real difference is the starting location, an early tyrant, some puzzle solutions, and an extra final boss. While each character's story in the original game were the same, Scenario B actually makes slight changes compared to Scenario A. Like how in Scenario A for Claire, she has to find the cure for the G-Virus to save Sherry. But in Scenario B, Sherry doesn't get infected and you don't have to find the cure. The different scenarios will determine which boss you'll actually fight. In Scenario A, Birkin infects either Ben or Irons, and then you have to fight the spawn. While in Scenario B, you have to fight pipe-wielding Birkin. Even the Tyrant, you know, the guy who sold the remake, and his name isn't Mr. X, it's Tyrant 00 of the T-103 series, even the Tyrant doesn't appear in Scenario A, only in Scenario B, meaning it's possible for many players to never even see him. Which sucks because they could have really had some fun with this if they made the story determined by scenario. Sherry for Scenario A and Ada for Scenario B. You can already think up some great ideas on how to run those stories. Like, you could write in Leon A that he easily gives up Sherry to Chief Irons, because that's his boss. Then Irons sends Leon to go do something at a specific location and promises him that there's no monsters there. When you arrive as Leon, you find a pair of lickers waiting for him. Leon realizes Irons set him up and chases after him to save Sherry. In Claire B, she comes across Ada, but since she's straight, Ada can't flirt with her to manipulate her into getting the G-Virus. The reveal of her betrayal can end up having a different outcome. Maybe Claire would actually shoot Ada. Oh, wait a minute, this video is about Resident Evil 4 Remake, not Resident Evil 2 Remake. The fuck am I doing? I was there when the first game came out, being excited over this new console called the PlayStation, and enjoying exploring this new 3D realm with games such as Crash Bandicoot, Tomb Raider, and Demo Disc. My younger brother was telling me about how he was at a friend's house and they played this new game called Resident Evil. A game so realistic that it's like you're actually there. A game so scary that when the dogs busted through the windows, they all immediately jumped and cried behind the couch. The first time I got to experience the game was when my older brother had invited over a friend of his from high school to spend the night. He brought along a small collection of PS1 games, including Resident Evil 1. We got to play that for a few hours, until there was a sudden loud banging on our front door, which was the friend's mother. Turned out he actually stole those games from someone that was renting in their house, and she drove all the way to our house to drag him back home. I think she brought McDonald's for him on the way back. Even so, I was kind of in and out with the Resident Evil series, usually based on quality. See, I'm not really a fan of horror. In fact, many of the so-called horror greats, like Outlast or Amnesia, I completely skipped on. Hey, do you want to play this game where you can't attack or defend yourself against an immortal monster chasing you down? Not really. Well, why not? Well, my only options are to hide, wait until it leaves, then move on. If it spots me, I just reload the latest save. Yeah, despite being the main selling meme, I didn't really care for Tyrant in Resident Evil 2 Remake. There's no real interaction or options with him. It's best just to play like he's not even there. Run right past him and maybe needing to use a full heal if he slaps you. Wait, does that mean you don't like the alien in Alien Isolation? Not really. Oh boy, that's really going to stop this video for most people. Which sucks, because I actually do think Alien Isolation is a great game. It's just, there were many design complaints I had that nobody ever seemed to talk about. The only complaint I saw was people saying the lockers were useless and they always got them caught. Which is funny because the lockers never actually got me killed once. It makes me wonder if the average player bothered to turn off their motion tracker, pull back and hold their breath. When it comes to horror games, I'm more interested in what else they offer to support the horror aspect, which in Resident Evil's case is the survival part. After all the previews, I managed to borrow Resident Evil 4 from a friend and it became one of my favourite games of all time. I've played this game dozens of times across different platforms. Not that I'm saying that you need to have a certain amount of playtime or playthroughs to be an expert. There are certainly many people who have played a game a whole lot less that can tell you why it works. There's also plenty of people who have played a game 100 times and have no idea why it works. There's also plenty of people who think they know why something works, but talking to them reveals they don't know what they're talking about. There's also plenty of people, see fanboys, who think what makes something work is strictly iconography. Which is funny when talking about Resident Evil 4 because that game completely disproves the idea of iconography. If you were to ask someone to make a sequel in a franchise, there are people who totally understand the core elements of that franchise and can make a faithful sequel. Then you have people who only have surface level understanding of the franchise and will just shove in as much iconography as they can and think that's what makes it sell. It sucks when a franchise you love is taken over by people who don't understand what made it great, and has a community that also doesn't understand why it was great. I'm still waiting for a true sequel to Halo 1, by the way, because Halo 2 wasn't it. If you were to make a new Resident Evil game, what would it be? Oh man, Resident Evil, it's about zombies. It's about zombie dogs. You gotta have the zombie dogs jump through a window. It's about giant spiders. It's about hunters. It's about tyrants. Gotta have herbs in the game. Gotta have ink ribbons. Emblems. That's how a lot of people view franchises and success. Fallout fans will have to become content with the fact that bottle caps will forever be currency. It's why something can come out with all that iconography and still be horrible. Because iconography is not what made it special. Resident Evil 4 proved this. It managed to identify what made Resident Evil work and made huge changes that still held to that core value. It actually threw out most of the iconography. The only icons in the game were herbs and first aid sprays, which are just a healing mechanic. You could replace herbs with pills and it would still work. A rose by any other name. And that's okay. It's okay to not know why something works. I don't know how my car works. I probably should because it keeps breaking down. The majority of fans to anything don't know why it works. It's more important for the people making it. In fact, the best way to present media to people is to do so in a way that they don't notice why it's working.
When you do things right, people won't be sure you've done anything at all.
It's for their brain to notice, not them. It's why the best work comes from people who don't treat it like a career path to the celebrity lifestyle. It's why people don't like pretentious artists trying to make themselves look smart. You look like you're only in it for the praise, not the art. Finding out why something works prevents us from mistreating a franchise and to continue making it better. Also good for critics. It's even a good sign for someone who thinks they know better to admit they don't know better. Not knowing or unwilling to learn will just result in crap. If you had asked me years ago how I would design a new Silent Hill game, I would have an answer for you. But I've watched Twin Perfect's YouTube channel go into detail over the Silent Hill franchise, stating that what makes Silent Hill work is living through someone else's nightmares, criticizing people who think Silent Hill is just about living through your own nightmare, because of James Sunderland. It's why after the original Silent Hill games came out that we kept getting bad imitations of Silent Hill 2 and constant Pyramid Head. Even when they tried getting rid of Pyramid Head and going, see, we aren't franchising Pyramid Head. We have our own boogeyman. We are original. Everybody pointed out it's just Pyramid Head again, but with a different design. Even the creator of Pyramid Head wishes he never made him. I look back at my own idea and realize, oh, my idea was just Silent Hill 2 again. Good thing I'm not a director.
Why can't we just get past Silent Hill 2?
Then I kinda came up with my own idea that was more original. I'm not saying that the only way to continue a franchise is to disregard all the iconography and only do something new for each individual part. You can still use icons or make stories exploring those icons. I'm just saying you should understand the core design of the franchise before making something new. That you don't have to constantly market the icon to sell until everybody gets sick of it. And don't be a complete arsehole and smash the icons just to act like you did everybody a favor. So yeah, Resident Evil 4 is really important to the industry, now more so than ever. A remake of the game can easily do the complete opposite of what the original achieved. Can easily travel down the alternate path of the original into a place of misunderstanding the core design and focus entirely on giving us the same stuff for all the wrong reasons. Which has already been done. Resident Evil 5 hits a lot of the same beats that Resident Evil 4 had, but didn't understand the core values. It's actually kind of funny how much Resident Evil 5 ripped straight from Resident Evil 4, but made a whole lot worse. One of the complaints people had about Resident Evil 5 was how they gave us zombies carrying guns.
Why is there a bulletproof vest in a Resident Evil game?
But Resident Evil 4 already did that. Well, there's a simple reason why they gave Resident Evil 4 a pass.
Presentation!
Although Resident Evil 4 getting a pass for gun zombies can be attributed to the core values actually being good. A lot of people love the giant walking statue, even though it's ridiculous. If there was a similar giant walking statue in Resident Evil 5, people would hate it, because they're not really enjoying the game. If the satellite laser was used for the final boss fight in Resident Evil 4, people would love it. Sometimes that's just how people react. They love something, so they have to love everything about it. Otherwise, it's proof that they don't? Maybe I should stop waxing poetry with this video already. Let's start with the intro. Both are great setup. They explain what happened to Leon after the Raccoon City incident and the death of Umbrella. The remake goes a bit further into Leon's training, a step up from the original where it was just assumed. Looks like the remake's already got a point. But here's a detail that's very funny to the story of the game. In the remake, they never mention Ashley or that she's being kidnapped. It's so weird. Okay, we all know the story for Resident Evil 4 and you can easily just dismiss it as unnecessary. But still, it's just so weird how little there actually is. The cops escorting Leon don't even seem to be aware of it. Although that could be intentional and they don't want that information getting out. It's only a problem for people who have zero idea, like they don't know anything about Resident Evil 4. And they live isolated. I'm confused on the character's destination. Where exactly are they going? In the original, they were going to the town because Ashley was sighted there. They pull over and let Leon out because there's no real road to the village. They get rammed by a truck and taken away. In the remake, they pull over so one of them can take a piss. For some reason he goes deeper than he probably should have and gets distracted by something, leading him in further to get killed. He probably should have been smarter than that. This causes Leon to go search for him. Looking around, you can't see a road, making me wonder where they were going. You walk down this corridor and realize you still haven't started the game yet. Can't pull out a weapon or open a menu. You run down this corridor, get taught how to turn right, how to inspect and duck. Come on guys. I know you need to let the players get acclimated to the controls, but did you have to stretch it out this far? Exploring the house is neat, slowly drawing the player in to find out something is wrong. Leon takes out his attacker in a cutscene, which does take agency away from the player, but brings him back for the player to deal with, as a new enemy type introduced for the remake. He's actually tougher and will probably drain your ammo, forcing you to avoid the other enemies and go through the secret door. It is a bit lame that the game forces you to run from enemies via cutscene, but it's fine. Maybe I should have gotten a PS5. It's fine, what's the worst that could happen? The intro is fine, it's just longer than the original. The original throws you right in and lets you go. In a way it's a preference thing, but there is something annoying about it that will be saved for a later chapter. It has all the same beats, except Huey was moved to way later, and a dead dog is used to warn you that the game has bear traps. After the intro, the game starts for real and we move on to... Okay, let's get this one out of the way.